Namaste and welcome.
Namaste and welcome.
It is our privilege and a pleasure to welcome Nayaswami, Jyotishji and Deviji live from Ananda Sangha, Ananda Village. Welcome to all dear Guru Bhais who are present here in Gurgaon on a beautiful Sunday morning. Welcome to all the dear Guru Bhais who are joining us from across the country and across the globe. Wonderful to have you with us. My name is Pranita.
And I'm Jayanti.
And once again, we'd like to welcome you to this satsang.
Thank you. It's a joy for us to be able to join you with this.
Yes. So the topic of today's satsang is be solution oriented. In our daily lives, managing our work, finances, family, and spirituality is perhaps central to all of us and will continue to remain so unless we all decide to move to the Himalayas. So why not learn how to stay positive and solution-oriented in every aspect of our lives? And aren't we blessed to have Jyotishji and Deviji here with us who epitomize spirituality and living in solution consciousness in every aspect of their lives?
While Jyotishji and Deviji need no introduction to us, in the context of this topic itself, Jyotish and Deviji have a family life where they are loving parents and grandparents. They have a work life which involves leading a worldwide institution in Ananda. That involves meetings, coordinations, financial planning, endless number of tasks, coordination, most importantly, travel throughout the globe, working through multiple time zones. Their list of tasks and activities is endless. Yet, every time we see them, there's one thing in common. They stay centered with a beautiful smile on their face. And how would that really be possible if not for a mindset of staying positive and having a solution-oriented consciousness?
For over 50 years, Jyotishji and Deviji have dedicated their lives to spreading the teachings of Kriya Yoga and love and peace of our Guru, Paramahansa Yogananda. Jyotishji has been with Swami Kriyananda, who is the founder of Anand Sangha, since 1967, even before Ananda was formally founded. Jyotishji and Deviji have been with Swamiji, creating Ananda in different parts of this world, building the community in every aspect that we see it today in various parts of the world. So today we will get more insights from them through a set of questions that have come from many of our Guru Bhais here in Gurgaon. But before that, I would like to invite them to start this satsang with a prayer, invoking the presence of our God and Gurus.
Thank you, Jayanti and Pranita. So let's begin with the prayer. I will lead us all. Heavenly Father, Divine Mother, friend, beloved God, great masters, Jesus Christ, Babaji Krishna, Lahiri Mahashaya, Swami Shri Yukteswar, beloved Guru, Paramahansa Yogananda Ji, great saints of all religions, we humbly bow to you all. Beloved Master, beloved Swami Kriyananda, guide us and bless us as we seek to know thee and as we seek to serve thee. Help us feel thy presence within, guiding us in a subtle way Help us feel that we're channels for thy love and thy joy to everyone we meet. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti.
Well, as Jayanti said, our topic this morning is be solution oriented. And the spiritual ramifications for this topic are great and profound and can be life-changing. But first of all, we want to say how happy we are to join you all through this in conversation Zoom satsang. And as you all know, Nayaswami Diana is here now, and we've been meeting with her and Jaya, planning out our time in India, which will start in mid-September. So we have a schedule already planned, and we'll be visiting many of you. And this year is the 20th anniversary of Ananda Sangha in India that Swami started in 2003. So we'll be doing a lot of satsangs at different places in India to celebrate that event. But now Jyotish will speak first, and we'll share a few thoughts about this topic, be solution oriented. Then I'll say a few words, and then we invite Pranita and Jayanti to ask questions that you all have submitted.
In some ways, one of the things that I like best about our spiritual path is how it unites everything together. And so one might think the question of being positive or being solution-oriented is a spiritual question. And of course it is a spiritual question, but it's also a practical question. It's a question not only of our mindset, but also of our ability to channel energy, channel prana. And yoga allows us to get in touch better with those subtle forces within. So let me just talk very briefly about how to stay positive on different levels: physical, mental, emotional, and then spiritual. On a physical level, there are many, many things that we can do that will help our energy be stronger. Right diet will help, having sattvic foods, not overeating, eating in a peaceful way, not in a rushed way. All of those things help. Exercise, daily exercise is very important. We write a weekly blog, we alternate. And the blog that came out a couple of days ago quoted Hippocrates saying that if you're in a bad mood, go for a walk. And if you're still in a bad mood, go for another walk. And so here's somebody speaking 2,000 years ago or more, giving the same kind of advice that a yogi would today, that get your energy flowing in a positive direction, and that changes your mindset. And so starting with physical things, energization exercises as taught by our path, yoga postures, those kinds of things all are meant to get a positive flow of prana going in the deep spine. We don't necessarily think of that as we're doing these things, but nonetheless, that's their deeper purpose. And then on a mental and emotional level, because everything is dualistic, that flow of prana in the spine can go either in an upward direction, which will make our mentality positive, or it can go in a negative direction, which will make us dour or upset or judgmental, all those contractive kinds of consciousness. And so the mind and the body and the prana all work together. And so by making a choice, a daily choice to be positive about what happens, gradually becomes a habit. You can't take on a big task. You can't say, oh, I'm going to be positive when I get a life-threatening disease. then I'll be positive. You have to start with the little things. You have to start with being positive about getting up in the morning. You get up in the morning and either you can say, oh, I hate this. I have to go to work again. I don't want to do anything today. That sets a negative flow and suppresses the flow of prana. Or you can be positive. Maybe you don't want to get up. Maybe you're a little bit tired. But Master said, greet the day as if it's a friend. So good morning, friend. Good morning, day. What adventures are we going to have today? See, it's a matter of making a choice. And if we make a choice to be positive, then that forms a habit of really, I'm speaking here not so much about thoughts. I'm speaking about choosing a positive thought also produces a positive flow of prana in the spine. And by habitually moving that prana in an upward direction, then when a challenge is facing us, somebody says something negative or demands something of us that doesn't seem fair, we have the tendency already built in habitually to have a positive response. And then finally, our meditation practices specifically are meant to bring the energy inward from the world of duality where we have little control, bring it into our own consciousness and lift it up. And in that way, we take control over our reactive processes. And even though we can't exert perfect control, perhaps, we can certainly exert the kind of control that allows us to be basically happy, basically positive people. It's not beyond our choice. It's not beyond building it into our meditations and our habits if we choose to do so.
I'll share also some thoughts. Thank you, Jyotish. That was very clear and I think very helpful for people. What I was thinking of was the story of when this topic was suggested. I was thinking about the story of Ananda and how Swami Kriyananda created Ananda. And it was, Master says there are no obstacles, there are only opportunities. Well, let me say we had many, many, many opportunities in building Ananda. And whatever came, Swami, and then by following his example, we never said, oh, okay, it's over, it's done, we can't go forward. We always tried to find a way forward. And once we were in a bookstore with Swamiji, and there was a book he was looking for, a particular book, and he didn't find it, and he asked the owner, and they said, oh, we can't get in, the publisher, we're out of stock now, and I need to get in touch with the publisher. And Swami just standing there said, oh, do you have the contact information for the publisher? And the man said, yes. And he said, may I see it? And Swami just called the publisher and started saying, could you send this book to this bookstore? And the owner was just sort of amazed. He said, well, you certainly are direct. And Swami said, I don't know how else to be. And it was, he had trained himself never to let anything stop him. I mean, sometimes you have to, it's clear it's not what God wants of you, but more often it's an opportunity to put out more energy. And, there's the amazing story also in the annals of Ananda Village of when we were building one of our first very nice buildings. It was where we published Swami's books and where we had our central offices. And Swami drew a little picture of it on a piece of paper, just, 8.5 by 11. And he handed it to our contractor builders. Can you build this? No architectural specs, no anything. He just handed it to them and they said, sir, we'll try to do this. But they didn't, it had a very complicated double sloped roof. It was like the building was on top of a hill And it was soaring this way and this way, like a bird in flight. And they didn't know how to do that roof, but they knew how to do everything leading up to it. And so every day they do what they knew how to do. They do what they knew how to do. And then finally, when it came to the day that they had to start working on the roof, where they didn't know how to go any farther, they did as much as they could. They just prayed to Master, and then they began cleaning up the work site, and a car pulls up out of totally unexpected. And a man got out and he introduced himself and he said, "What are you boys doing here?" And they said, we're trying to build this roof, but we don't know how to do it. And the man said, "This is very strange. I live in Santa Barbara, California, which is about a
8 or 10 hour drive.
He said, "This morning I got up early, and I've never been to Ananda, but I'm a disciple of Yogananda, and something told me to drive here." And he said, "I am one of the few people in California. I'm an engineer, and I show you how to do this roof." Out of the clear blue sky that happened. And that's one of many, many, many stories we could share. But the point is, you just keep putting one foot in front of the other with positive expectation, never getting deterred, never getting defeated. You know, I think most of us know the wonderful superconscious living exercises that Swamiji taught, created and taught. And there's that one where I am positive, energetic, and then you jump up, enthusiastic. And that's a very good affirmation. If you're feeling down, do that little exercise. I'm positive, energetic, enthusiastic.
I'll just break in here and say that when we do that in public, about half or more of the audience kind of refuses to do it the first 2 or 3 times. It's like, no, I'm not going to get that much energy, positive energy going. And then I don't know whether they feel embarrassed or the magnetism of the others doing it. And then people join in. And by the end of doing it 5 or 6 times, everybody's doing it. But that group is like mental citizens. You know, we've got some mental citizens that immediately say yes, and others saying, "I'm not going to do that. You're not going to make me." And then finally they join in.
And just to conclude, and then we'll have our 2 wonderful hostesses ask us questions. You know, it becomes, if you meet God halfway, say, "I don't know how to do this. I don't know if it's possible, but I'm going to be solution oriented, and I will meet you halfway. You lead me the other way." It's a miraculous thing how often it works. And if you can just understand that this world is not real. I mean, that's the basic teachings of Vedanta. This world is Maya, it's delusion. And all the things that happen, the good and the bad and the obstacles and the wonderful people and the difficult people, it's all God's play. And if we can see that and see through the Maya, the dream, and say, all that really exists is God's light and his grace and his love for us. And by not accepting the negative reality of this world, you pierce that veil. We were talking with someone recently who was going through a difficult time, and Jyotishji gave him some very good advice. He said, "Look for the brightest spot in the fog." And that's really good advice. When you're faced with a problem, look for the brightest possibility, even if it's like a little thread, but you follow that, and then you break through the hypnotism that this world has power over you, because it doesn't, unless you give that power to it. We are children of God. We are born with his omnipresence, with his omniscience, with his omnipotence, all powerful. And that's why there are no obstacles, only opportunities, so that we learn that we can overcome. And once we learn that, and we saw that in Swamiji, then life becomes a very beautiful dream. Okay, so we invite you now to ask us some questions.
Thank
Or
you.
make
Thank you,
copies.
Jyotishji, and thank you, Deviji. I promise you, when I wake up tomorrow, I will not say, oh, another Monday. And use the beautiful thing that you said, Jyotishji, to say hello to the day, to say good morning to the day itself. What a lovely thought to wake up on. And Deviji, thank you for those very practical tips, taking one step after the other, rather than looking at a big problem or a difficulty. Jyotishji, the beautiful advice that you gave your friend of looking at the brightest spot in the fog. These are such wonderful tips that I'm sure all of us will remember and take forward in our lives. So thank you for that. First question, no surprises, is always about Swamiji's life. We know that Swamiji set up such a large community across the world, and each had its own unique challenges. Deviji covered such a beautiful story where Swamiji says, staying direct, that is the only way that he knows. So the question that we have is, what are some of the tips, in addition to what you've covered about living positive and solution-oriented on the physical, mental, spiritual, and emotional level? Can you share with us some tips that Swamiji had about living positive, always with a smile, staying centered and attuned amidst all the difficulties that he's faced?
Well, there are a few. First of all, Swamiji had a tremendous amount of energy, physical and mental energy. And he made sure that he kept his life energetic. I remember being with him when he was at a time in his life when he was elderly. His body was giving him trouble. And it was in a period when he was feeling ill. And yet every morning we would go outside. This was in India at the time. We would go outside and he would do the energization exercises. He was in his mid to late 80s at the time. In many cases, he had to lean against the wall while he lifted a foot or tensed something. But he even to the end of his life, when he was younger, he was a person of tremendous energy. Even the way that he walked, he walked with a very strong pace, with a very erect spine. People often commented on how his spine was so erect, his chest was out. He drove fast. Quite frankly, he drove way above the speed limit. He just was a powerhouse of energy, and he just lived that way. So the first thing is to affirm and act with a lot of energy in whatever you do. Whatever you're putting your energy into, you should do it well. He was always enthusiastic. He said that enthusiasm is the power of joy flowing through the will to accomplish something. That's what enthusiasm is. So it's God's power of joy flowing through our will, which is the desire to accomplish something. And he was always enthusiastic. As Devi was saying, he met many, many challenges. But one of the things that he did, and we saw him do this, so it wasn't just a teaching, it was a practice, was he always looked past the problem to say there must be a solution. One time in the very early years of the community, he had a very difficult time because he had to earn all the money to buy the land and build the first buildings. And so he was giving classes every night of the week in different cities. I was helping him some, but he was carrying the great majority of the burden for this. And we had already started by this time to build some of the buildings at our first piece of land. And the lumber company that was had allowed us to get things on credit, somebody told them that perhaps Ananda was not a very good good financial bet. And so they demanded the credit that was many tens of thousands of dollars, that be paid immediately instead of in a long term, as they had previously agreed. So it was a big shock and an existential threat for our fledgling community. And Swamiji went over to the house of some friends, and they said, "Oh, Swami, here, let us give you some tea and relax, and you can feel better about these things." Swami said, "I don't want to feel better about
I
them.
don't care about
I don't care about how I feel. I want to know what I can do about it." And he immediately started calling people, and he secured loans from friends. And then he called the owner of this lumber yard, and he said, "You know, I have the money in hand. I could pay you today, but I'm going to string it out just as long as I possibly can and make you incur all the legal fees that you can incur for breaking our bargain." And the owner said, "Well, if you can pay me, I'll give you a big discount." And so, but it was that facing that challenge, which was a big challenge at the time, facing it with the thought there must be something that I can do. And of course, Swamiji always included the divine in whatever he was trying to accomplish. And so his power of will, supplanted by the power of divine, created the magnetism that allowed solutions.
We could actually talk at great length on this topic because we saw so many examples. Another one that I'll share is something we've mentioned, the occurrence, the big forest fire that happened in 1976 that burnt the community down to the ground. This was 7 years into our history, and all the buildings were gone. Everything was gone, and we had no insurance. And Swami was away from the community at the time the fire happened. He was in seclusion writing the new path, but he came back immediately. And it was so marvelous because it wasn't just his spirit. He was so centered. So, I mean, it was as though to say, one day this exists, the next day it doesn't. Why get pulled down by it? But he came up to me and he said, I was struggling. I was not at that level where I could say, oh, fine, we lost everything. But he came up to me and he said, how are you, Davy? And before I could say anything, he said, well, that's good. And then he just walked away. So he was just saying, there's no room for negative thinking now. You won't get through it if you do. And then, I don't know, 3 or 4 days later, a week later, we had a big meeting with the whole community. And someone recently sent me a cassette tape of that meeting, which I didn't remember. And just listening to it, he was a master of pulling things out of what could have been a tragedy. You know, we had no insurance, we had no money, we had no houses, we had no way to earn. I mean, you know, it was really, Divine Mother took it all away. But in this meeting, Swami was calm, he was joyful. How are we going to rebuild? Okay. Somebody said, well, I know we can get a project with the government and go and plant trees on this government property. And so some people said, okay, we'll do this. Some people said, we'll do this, we'll do that. And by the end of the meeting, it was like, okay, we have a plan, we have solutions of how to go forward. And there was no room for self-pity. There was no room for blame, for negative energy. All there was how do we find solutions for this very difficult situation? And really, for most of us, it was the most instructive thing in our lives.
So that was so inspiring. I mean, we can continue hearing as many stories as you can tell us. So moving on to the next question, Jyotishji and Deviji. Lahiri Mahashaya, whenever anybody would go to him with any problem, be it family, finances, he would say, solve all your problems through Kriya. So Can you elaborate on that? Because at the end of this whole thing is possible when, everybody, we are practicing the Kriya, we are living the path of Kriya. So especially for people who are new to this path, or, new to these teachings, it'd be very helpful if you can elaborate on this.
Okay, well, there are several levels to that answer of his. First of all, understand he was not saying, he was an accountant. So he was not saying practice Kriya Yoga, and then when you go to the office, all of your books will already have been filled in. He wasn't saying that. He was saying that if you practice Kriya Yoga, you will get the positive energy under your control. You'll get your reactive processes under your control. And when you're centered, you will be able to do in a short period of time what might otherwise take you a long period of time. Yogananda's most advanced disciple was a multimillionaire, so rich that he owned his own golf course,
Rajarsi
Janakananda, but he was a saint. It wasn't just the money. But when he first came to Master, he said he was very nervous and always anxious about things. And then Master brought him in, very close disciple. And through Kriya Yoga, he grew more and more until after a few years, he regularly went into Samadhi. But he was, not only did he have one of the largest insurance companies in the United States, but he was on the board of directors of many what we would call Fortune 500 companies of today. But he would often come into work at 10 o'clock in the morning. And people would say, how could you come in that late when you have so much on your plate? And he said, well, if I meditate in the morning, I will be able to handle what I need to handle in a tenth the amount of time. He would often listen to a board of directors meeting, and he would just be quiet until he would say, okay, here's what everyone is saying, and here's what we should do. And he would have the solution just like that, where everybody else was kind of meandering in the fog. So that's one thing. Kriya Yoga lifts our energy and makes us very much better to do whatever we're going to do. But there's another and deeper meaning to the problems will all be solved by Kriya Yoga. Remember, everything is a dream. And all of the problems that we have exist in a dreamland, in a dreamscape. And so at night, if we're dreaming a dream and we're trying to figure out a solution of how to do something, maybe we can figure out a solution, maybe we can't. But what's the real solution? When you wake up in the morning, that problem doesn't exist anymore. So the higher level that Lahiri was saying is Kriya Yoga takes us out of the realm of delusion, and out of the realm of delusion, all of these issues and anxieties and worries and fears and negativity, they simply don't exist.
And as we were talking about, as Jyotishji was talking about at the beginning of the satsang, that solution-oriented depends on a positive flow of energy in the spine. And that's what Kriya Yoga is. It's simply put, it's learning to direct the prana, the energy, and on a deeper level, the consciousness from lower centers based on survival and power and greed and self-interest, bringing them up to the higher centers, which are devotion and love and calmness and peace, and then the spiritual eye. And when the more deeply we practice Kriya Yoga, the more we have under our control the ability to consciously lift the energy up from the lower centers to the higher centers. And, Swami tells a story from the New Path when he was with Master, and he was a young monk, a young disciple, and he had not been there very long. And he was really longing to see Master, but Master was busy. He was answering correspondence, and he hadn't seen him for a while. And then word came that Master needed some big bottles of drinking water brought up to his kitchen. And so Swami appropriated this job for himself, and he brought, but Master was in the other room doing correspondence, dictating letters. And so Swami said, I brought these big 5-gallon water bottles up, and he said I was making as much noise as I possibly could to get Master's attention, but I didn't distract him. And finally I went down back to my room, and he said, I got in a bad mood, and I started thinking, Master doesn't care about me. I'm not a true disciple. I'm just a worker here. And then something stopped him, and he said, do you like thinking like that? No. Does it make you happy to have self-pity and negative energy? No. So Swami said he held his mind very strongly at the spiritual eye, very powerfully for just a brief period of time. And then his thoughts all changed. He said, of course, Master loves me. He's so busy. If he had to spend time with every one of us, how would he get his work done? And we get to live here with him. And so that's the point. The raising Kriya Yoga is the answer to solve all your problems, because in raising the energy to the spiritual eye, this is the seat of positive energy. And even anatomically, they say that the frontal lobe of the brain is the center for solution consciousness. And so by bringing our energy there, we find solutions to things. And so it's, you know, it's really, it's important to bear this in mind. And when you hit a problem, when you're in a mood, when you're upset with somebody, consciously stop, go off by yourself, even if it's sitting on the couch and not talking, and do a few kriyas and raise the energy. And you experiment. Jyotishji and I are going to be recording 6-week or 8-week, 6-week, I think, 6-week series later this summer called Experiments in Spiritual Living. And this is a great experiment for you all to do. When you feel in a negative space, do some kriya, consciously feel the energy, bring it up to the spiritual eye, and then take note. What's the result?
And if you don't have kriya, do some deep breathing, because kriya is a breathing exercise on one level, a pranayama, but any deep breathing and concentrating here at the spiritual eye will uplift your consciousness. I'll just add very briefly that I can't tell you the number of times we heard from people that they went to Swami and they had a whole list of problems and questions they wanted to ask him about. And then by the time they sat in his presence with the magnetism of uplifted consciousness, by the time they sat there for a few minutes, they forgot their problems and they forgot their questions. And then they would come out, and then a half hour later, wasn't that he hypnotized them. It was that at a higher level of consciousness, those problems and questions just cease to be important. It'd be kind of like, you know, that you're very, very worried about whether you should carry your bag on the right side of your body or the left side of your body, and you can't figure it out, and you're worried. And then you get in a little higher question. It just doesn't matter. And that most of our problems, really, they just don't matter.
You know, I'll just say briefly, because one of you mentioned that we have grandchildren. We have some lovely grandchildren, but the oldest one, who's 26 years old now, recently said to us, you know, Grandma, you and Grandpa are two of the most easygoing, that's how she put it, easygoing people we know. And I said, why do you think that is? She said, I don't know. And I said, well, it's probably because we meditate. But it's, you just, anything that happens, instead of saying, oh my gosh, this is happening. And, you know, you just say, oh, okay, well, it'll work out all right. And it always does.
Excellent.
Thank you so
What a blessing we all have to be on a path where we can, at our will, raise our consciousness and be in that solution orientation. Such a beautiful thought that you have left with us, Jyotishji and Deviji. So thank you for that. And the next question is quite related. It comes from people who are householders and those working in corporates, and they say, we stay under a lot of work stress. And primarily that is because many things are not in our control. What would be your advice to them on staying positive and staying in a solution-oriented consciousness, even when things are not in their control?
Yes, this is harder because when you're in another environment and under another person's control, it's harder to control your own moods, because everything in the world has a magnetism to it. Other people, each person carries a kind of a magnetism. Environments have a magnetism. And when you can control your own environment and the people around you, it's easier to have positive energy. When you're in a negative energy force field, then you have to put a little force field around yourself. Master's second most advanced disciple, a man named Yogacharya Oliver Black, he said, I create a bubble of joy around me, and I never allow anyone or anything to burst my bubble of joy. And so think of having a bubble of joy and positive energy around you. Now, that doesn't mean that that's going to change the circumstances, but it helps you. Somebody used a good image to us, said that when you're in an environment that is difficult, or you're talking to a person that's difficult, it's like being in a car when there's a lot of smog outside. If you have to say something, you don't get out of the car, you just roll the window down a little bit and exchange the conversation, then you roll the window back up. So keep your aura around yourself and interact as you have to. We all have to have interactions, but until your own magnetism is strong, it's easy for other people, negative magnetism, to pull you off.
You know, it's also, I want to talk about one aspect of the question you asked, when we're things that we don't have, when we're in a situation where we don't have control. This is a very important thing to think about. What do I have control over? Because once Nayaswami Dhyana told us the story that Nayaswami Jaya was giving a lecture, an introductory lecture for a How to Meditate series. And she said it was a very nice satsang lecture that he gave. And then at the end, he was taking some questions. And one man asked the question, do you have any yogic powers? And Jaya, being a very humble man, said, no, I don't have any powers. Or I'm not aware that I have any powers. And Dhyana said you could feel the whole audience kind of like, oh, I don't know if we want to take this meditation course. You don't get any powers. These are all new people. And then Jayapati said, but I do have one power. I have the power to choose to be happy or not. He said, I don't always use the power, but I do have it. And then Dhyana said, everybody perked up and everybody signed up for the meditation course. But the point is, no, we cannot control other people, but we can choose to be happy by being positive, energetic, enthusiastic in all circumstances. And then if our coworkers are terrible, if our in-laws are critical, whatever it might be, you still can choose to be happy. And that's a solution. And we have that under our control. And if we, like Yogacharya Black said, to create a bubble of joy. And then just briefly to add, in that wonderful chapter in Autobiography of a Yogi, when the Law of Miracles, where at the very end, Master is sitting in a movie theater in the end of the chapter, and it's a newsreel about the horrors of World War I. And he comes out and he's very disheartened. to see all that human suffering. And he prays to God, why? Why do you allow this? And then he hears this voice say, it's all a play of light and darkness. And that still doesn't satisfy him. And then he sees it. It's like God blessed him to see the cosmic projector projecting this whole drama from the consciousness of the divine light. And Yogananda said, then I understood. And then there was one line that really has made a big impact for me. Master said, one's values are profoundly changed when one realizes that one's reality lies not in this world, but beyond it. And I think that's the point. Whatever difficulty you're going through, just have fortitude and be as positive you can, but just always hold in the back of your mind, this is not the reality. These people, they seem like they're real, but they're just God's consciousness. And so always remember that if you see your reality not in this world, but beyond it, then you live in a state of peace and joy.
Thank you. Thank you so much on that. You have kind of answered this question, but this has come from one of our Guru Bhais. So if you can, add to that. The question is sometimes, this is again, work environment. Sometimes our suggestions or what we feel is the right solution is discarded by others, especially at work. What should we do in that situation?
Well, if you can reason with the person or somehow without threatening, a lot of times people discard simply because it's a demonstration of power. And so unfortunately, in work environments, we often have to swim in a sea of power plays. And so if you can somehow transmit a thought without threatening the power of the person, Swami Kriyananda would often advise us to, even if we had the idea, give the credit to someone else for having the idea. Because the idea, accomplishing the idea was more important than, oh, it's my idea. And he also said it's good practice to reduce our ego. So if you can reason, and if you can't, then let go of the thought that in this situation you have some ego investment in accomplishing your idea, even though it might be right. Swami said that. In fact, because of this world, he said most of what happened at Ananda was a compromise of his vision of what could be there. He visioned beautiful buildings. We were only able to build what we could build, structures. But nonetheless, he just gave it all to God. Give it to God.
And part of the reason, following up on what Jyotish just said, part of the reason for Ananda's longevity and success, we just had completed last week, actually on Thursday, we had a 3-day retreat and planning with Ananda community leaders from throughout the world, India, Europe, America. And it's just thrilling to see the growth. And part of the reason is that Swami said he talked about compromise, but he wanted us. I mean, he maybe saw the direct way to do it, and then someone came up with a lesser idea. I remember a number of times where he didn't say, we have to do what I want. He would say, maybe we should do this. And I remember one time specifically, I said, oh no, Swami, let's do this. And he said, all right. And it didn't work out at all. But he wanted us to, it was so beautiful that he knew way more than any of us. But he let us feel, because he knew it was important for the future of Ananda, to feel that we also could have creative ideas. So what he was teaching was, it doesn't matter whose idea it is. It's the flow of energy. You know, I just want to respond. There's a question that came online and we could answer it in 2 sentences. Should I always do meditation after a Kriya? Do all your Kriyas, however many you're doing, 14 or 24, up to 108, and then practice stillness and meditation. But if I understand correctly, don't do a Kriya and then meditate, do them all together.
Yeah, do all of your Kriyas, but leave time after Kriya for no technique, just trying to unify offer your consciousness into the infinite.
Okay, next question.
Excellent. Thank you for those very practical tips that you've given us. And I'm sure those working in workplaces where things are out of immediate control would really benefit from those tips. There is a related question about finding solutions. And the question is, how do I know that when a solution comes to me, it is not guided by one's ego, but it is actually what our gurus or God is wanting us to do? How should we find that out?
Well, first of all, accept that until we're truly free, everything will have a little taint of ego to it. So it isn't this or that. But by and large, if you feel that as you offer the potential solution to master, you feel calm, you feel joyful, and you feel that he's pleased with this, then it's much more likely to be the right solution. That's what I meant by rarely do we have absolute clarity. Life is kind of like living in a fog, but
Look for the brightest
look
part.
for the brightest part in that fog, but don't wait until there's absolute clarity and now I know that it's God's will. Feel that you're doing this for God, for Master, doing your best. Master, in fact, said, do your best and then forget tomorrow.
Leave the results
Leave
to
the
God.
results to God.
Yeah, and you know, there's a book that I worked on. It's called, and I'm pretty sure it's available in India, called Intuition for Starters. And I edited it. It was all from Swami's transcribed talks, and I merely, edited it, took out the ums and put in periods, but it's all his words. And he talks about the techniques of developing intuition and drawing true guidance. And as Jyotish said, true guidance, contrasting with egoic desires, one could say, true guidance is calm. There's a kind of a slightly impersonal quality to it. And it isn't like, oh boy, this is what I want, this is what I want. But it may not even be what you want, but you kind of know that that's what you should do. And then further, Swami said, when you're trying to follow what you feel is intuitive guidance, don't just put all your eggs in one basket, so to speak, but just take one step. How does that feel? Is that calmness? Is that clarity? Is that sense of deep divine reassurance? Is it still there? Then take the next step and then check in. Calm, clear, divine guidance, and then keep proceeding. So you sensitively move forward, because sometimes God's guidance, like he'll say, you'll be moving in one direction and you take those steps, but then it'll be time to go in a slightly different direction. And so to always, don't presume, but always humbly offer it up and say, God, this feels like what you're wanting me to do. And because whenever I've heard it often, and I think we all have, oh, God wants me to do this. And whenever somebody says that, to be perfectly honest, I always know it's the ego. If it's true inner guidance, you don't say, God wants it. You just simply.
It seems right.
It seems right. Yeah.
So continuing on that line, suppose, the person feels that, okay, the excitement is not there. This feels more like it. It seems more calming. So they go with that particular thing, as you just mentioned, that, wait, see, is this going right? And then maybe there is a turn somewhere. And so it so happens that at times, even though you feel that this is the right way to go, sometimes the obstacles come, and then they say, "Oh, I was wrong. Probably this was not. Maybe it was not the right decision. Probably I should have gone with that." So how to stay positive and like accept that you're still on the right path, and that you need to now take the next turn that you just mentioned.
Well, yeah, it's, as I say, it usually isn't clear, crystal clear, but generally speaking, there is a feeling that something is right. And if you're lacking that, first of all, offering something to God is much more likely to bring you in tune than if you forget and don't offer it to God. So give every day to God. At the end of each meditation, I always end my meditation by bowing to Master and asking him to help guide my actions and my thoughts and my feelings during the day. So that day is offered to Master, offered to God. It's much more likely to go well than if you don't meditate or you don't do anything, you're just caught on a conveyor belt. So that's one thing. Secondly, I would say, pull back in yourself and ask, what would be the influence on others if I took this particular step? Generally speaking, a step that comes from God is helpful to others also. And if you have the feeling, oh, I'll benefit so much and it doesn't matter what happens to those people, you can be pretty sure that that doesn't come from God, that intuition. So think about others, because that expansion of your consciousness in the act of thinking about others will attune you to God's will.
And we're coming close to the end of our time. So I'll just also add, if you remember, Jyotish said to start each day just with a thank you for this day. I look forward to everything that's going to come with a positive expectation. But then here we come to the close of the day. And just as you're about to go to sleep, also thank God for that day. And then you can do a little evaluation. Oh, that went well. That was a good energy during that part. When I had that conversation, my energy wasn't so good then. I could have done better. And then, but just go through and just look at the day and say, tomorrow I will do better. And then just offer it all up to God. And just starting the day with enthusiasm and joy, ending the day with gratitude and self-offering. And if we can just make that cycle, you break out of the delusion of time and you just say, it's all one moment. And that one moment is living in the joy of God's presence. And then all the problems, as we were saying, when people would come to Swami with their problems, they just couldn't remember them because they were on, the problems exist on a lower level of consciousness.
I always remember a beautiful image that Master would use sometimes. He said, we should wake up like a cat. Said, you watch a cat come out of sleep and it kind of stretches one paw and then stretches the other paw and the back leg. And he said, that fills the body with energy. So when you wake up in the morning, tense the body, stretch your arm, stretch your leg, and send energy into the body. And that automatically gets us started in the right way. Then there's a question just very, very quickly about children and media. Media has so much negative energy and influence. It's hard to isolate a child and not allow them to have any media, but do your best to set limitations, maybe time limitations on how much media they can be on, and types of media. But it's hard to block energy, but it's easier to channel it properly.
And we have a very special guest with us tonight, and we're going to invite her to come on the screen. Nayaswami Diana is with us, and here she comes. She was in the other room the whole time, but she didn't want to come out.
Oh, good to
So
see
she
you.
told me at the
Good to see you,
Good to see you, Jana ji.
We'll
Hello.
all be together in Gurgaon for the 20th anniversary.
Yes,
celebration.
And
we
we
are
look
looking
forward to
forward to that.
It's hard to meet Jyotish and Deviji here, so I'll bring them with
Yes.
Yes,
We look forward to
absolutely.
that.
Thank you. Thank you so much for this very uplifting satsang. I mean, we would have wanted to go on and on for a long time, but I think we have the time limitations. But as you just said, we started this satsang with enthusiasm. And as we are ending it, it's still with a lot of enthusiasm and more, we have uplifted with your presence, your inspiration. And thank you so much. And we look forward to having you here personally and for more inspiration and positive feeling that we always receive when you are with us.
And can everyone come on the screen now
Yes.
and we'll look at the
Yes,
gallery?
come. Everybody come.
We see so many dear friends,
Oh, my goodness.
Preeti and Vipan. Oh, we could name so many names.
Fred.
Pratsan. Oh, it's just wonderful to see you.
Oh, goodness gracious.
Oh,
Oh, wow.
it's like visiting our family.
Oh, my goodness. Thank you all for
So
joining.
if you can end the session with a healing prayer.
Okay, we will do that now. Okay, so let's send light into the world now. Let's pray. Beloved Master, Divine Mother,
Divine,
may thy love shine forever
may thy love shine forever
throughout this world,
throughout this world,
awakening people everywhere
awakening people everywhere
to their divine birthright,
to their divine birthright.
thy joy,
Thy joy,
thy peace,
thy peace,
thy love,
thy love.
and may all darkness be driven away
May all darkness be driven
as God's light becomes ever stronger in our hearts and in the hearts of everyone we know. And let's rub our hands together, chanting Om and sending out these waves of divine light and uplifted consciousness throughout the world. Om. 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 God bless you.
Have a wonderful day. Think of the day ahead as your friend and treat it in a friendly manner.
Thank you.
Thank
you.
Thank you.
See the group standing in Gurgaon. You should all do the super conscious living exercise now. I'm positive, energetic, enthusiastic. Okay, God bless you.
God bless
Thank
you.
you. Thank you.